welcome to another episode of Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation. I am Michael Harris, chairman of the Shelby County Democratic Party, and we decided to create this production to give voters an up-close and personal opportunity to hear from candidates, especially in light of the changes that have impacted us all due to COVID-19. So what better way to learn more about a candidate than in your living room or your den, your bed or bathtub, or on your couch eating ice cream while you get educated. So take this opportunity to watch and learn about our guest today, but make sure you watch every episode so that you can become well informed and really know what decision will be best for you and for your district when you go to the polls. Our special guest for today is running to represent Tennessee in the United States Senate, and her name is Miss Marquita Bradshaw. Welcome to the show, Miss Bradshaw.
Thank you for having me, Michael Harris. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're glad to have you. And of course, this is Coffee, Candidates and Conversation. You don't have to have coffee, but I have my Shelby County Democratic Party SCDP coffee mug. And I understand that you have a refreshing beverage.
Yes, I do. I am drinking fizzy blueberry lemonade
Nice.
from my coffee cup today.
Nice. Well, let's go ahead and jump right on in. We learned a lot about candidates over the course of a campaign period, but I think it's a good idea to give candidates or to give voters an opportunity to know something a little different, something a little more personal, just a little bit. So my first question for you is, can you tell us something about you that we cannot easily find on Google, that we will not learn from looking at your website for your campaign or any campaign materials, and that we would likely not learn about you if we work with you in your professional capacity?
I was a band geek. I played the oboe and in the saxophone and in the marching band season. And so, yes, I was a band geek. And when I attended the University of Memphis, I also did the flag. I was a flag girl.
Okay, well,
in college.
You're in good company.
A Lancer.
I'm a musician of sorts myself, and got a couple bass guitars, got the keyboard in the background, and I played saxophone. I still do alto and tenor saxophone, and I was on the drum line in high school. Okay, that's cool. That is cool. So I have to ask. So in terms of did you compete in any competitions, or were you able to win any prizes playing the oboe, All West or All State for Tennessee by chance?
Well, I did compete, but I was a mediocre oboe player.
Well,
but it was to get my room and board and my books paid for when I was in college.
Well, let me go ahead and say this. If you were playing oboe in college and you were getting a scholarship for it, you were not a mediocre oboe player. So kudos to you. Mm-hmm. All right, well, Ms. Bradshaw, in most instances, and I'm sure you can identify with this, that when you become a candidate for a political office, your life essentially becomes the sum of your constituents' concerns. And what we often forget as voters is that both candidates and elected officials are still voters. So let's take your candidate hat off for a moment. Let's just set it to the side and let's talk voter to voter. What for you, Ms. Bradshaw, is the single most important issue of the day?
Well, the single most important issue of today is tied to everything else, and that's healthcare. Right now, um, as a candidate, I struggle to keep my healthcare because I have to make a decision sometimes if I'm going to pay one bill or actually pay my premium because my hours have been cut since COVID-19. And I have not been able to do many nonprofit consulting gigs right now because a lot of people have just been too money.
Mhm. Okay. And so let's take the healthcare uh, issue and sort of run with it. This is, I think, this statement kind of says a handful. You know, healthcare access for the middle class versus access for the poor and elderly. And let me find. There's a statement I want to publish behind that. And here it is. The middle class struggles to pay deductibles and medical bills, and poor people struggle to pay insurance premiums. What in your mind is a way that we can attack both of those unique issues, or how should we attack the problem of healthcare in the United States?
Well, we have to have a universal system that's patient centered, that follows the health outcomes and the experiences of patients in order for us to have just a healthy and safe environment and well medical environment. Right now, our whole economy is shutting down because we have a pandemic. Just imagine if everyone had access to a primary care provider right now and didn't have to worry about having a bill looming over their head because we all pay into the system in order for everybody to have health care.
Okay. And in relation to the issue of healthcare, which was exposed by our global pandemic, I'm going to ask you to rate America's response to COVID-19 on a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst or really bad, and then 10 being excellent. So, how would you rate America's response to COVID-19? And then following that
Because,
question, what would you have done differently?
okay, well, because this has not been something that most legislators have faced in their career, but leaders are expected to lead. I rate them as a 6 because they were able to stabilize Wall Street, but they left working people hanging. Um, right now, people need health care in order to stay safe in a pandemic. Right now, people need to have the economic support they need in order to stay safe in a pandemic. And right now, they still hadn't moved on the second package. And right now, they are playing politics when they know exactly what people need in order to stay healthy and safe.
Okay. And so, what would you do differently in terms of uh, the response to COVID-19? Do you think we reopened too soon?
I do think we reopened too soon. And the data is actually showing that we reopened too soon with the surges of reported cases. And I think Shelby County just had their first child death, um, which is heartbreaking because this could have been avoidable. Uh, what I what I would have done differently is pretty much push for Medicare for all to be put in place in order for everybody to be able to have that patient-centered health care where it's driven about health outcomes and not sick care. Because right now we have a system that pays for people to be sick and not well.
Okay. Okay. Well, one more question, and then we'll take a brief break and then get into our lightning round. And this question is a one I think is relatively straightforward, but it's a healthcare related question. Here's the facts related to it. Tennessee ranks 7th worst in hypertension and heart disease, 7th worst in hypertension and heart disease. We are the 5th worst in diabetes and the 3rd worst for stroke. And this costs Tennessee about $5 billion per year. And then if you look at those conditions, the demographic that's most impacted by these specific conditions is, our urban communities, our Black and brown communities, and low income communities. How would you attack this problem? If you have an opportunity to, or if you could champion the issue, how would you attack it as our next senator?
You have to tie what's going on with people health to environmental integrity. When you talk about the populations that's most affected by diabetes, stroke, heart attacks, they are mostly living in polluted communities. Right, Michael? And so we have to look at how closely our health is impacted by the environment, not just, I'm talking about the actual physical environment. So in South Memphis, you can actually follow the health disparities based on the type of pollution that's in Shelby County. If you look at the map, it makes a weird looking C. And you can see the health disparities. You can see where the sites are polluted in Shelby County, and mostly in the areas that are predominantly African American. And so if you follow the data, we have to do things differently because those communities also experience divestment. They have not had the investments necessary to build out the community in order for the economics to be strong, because there's not any local thriving businesses in my South Memphis community that I grew up in like it used to be. And as far as when it comes to fresh produce in stores, it's like food deserts and food swamps and full of pollution. So it's all about connecting the dots of people health being tied to the physical environment health. Right at the depot where I grew up down the street, the Army Depot, it's a Superfund site. A lot of the chemicals were made to kill people and plants. In the certain class of chemicals are called endocrine disruptors, which really affects the reproductive system and the circulatory system. And so as a result, you can see more heart attacks and strokes that actually happen on one street within 1 week. It happens like that in our old community, where my aunt and all her friends died within the same week that lived on the same street, because maybe that's the way the wind blew. And we have to really look at how our health is tied to the environment and look at, in Memphis, I think we have almost like 220 Superfund sites, whether they're active, inactive, or national priority list Superfund site. And in this whole state of Tennessee, there are about 1,100. And there's 95 counties. So how do you get 220 something here in Memphis? The last time I checked, that's a disparity, and it's based on environmental racism. And we have to address that the environment impacts the whole health of a person, from the respiratory, the circulatory, even reproductive, and the things that are manifesting. And the research needs to link that to the environment. And that's the reason why I am running, because I don't want anybody else to put what's going on in the environment on the back burner, because it is about life or death. If we put the hashtags behind of people's names that have died of cancer and sick from asthma, then we would not have a place on the internet that didn't have a name on it.
Well, let me ask this question. Do you think that with preventative care that the numbers could decrease? And I hear the environmental consideration as a potential factor in these statistics being what they are. But what about preventative care and lack of access to preventative health care for people?
Well,
Go
Well,
ahead.
well, preventative care
Mhm.
is a good step. But for people who are living in communities that are polluted, you have environmental induced diseases that mimic other diseases. So if you don't stop the source of pollution, then you're going to continually have health problems. You have acute exposure and chronic exposure. Acute is what happens instantaneously, and chronic exposure happens over time. And so, yes, preventative can actually identify problems early on instead of catching it later on. But in some instances, some people are diagnosed and die within the same week.
Well, uh, point well taken on that. We are going to take a pause for the calls right now, and we're going to play a commercial and share some important information with our viewers, and then we'll be back to start our lightning round. And we'll make it through a lot of issues, and voters, you'll learn a lot about where Ms. Bradshaw stands on some more of the big issues. So let's take a pause for the calls, and we will be right back. I am Michael Harris, chairman of the Shelby County Democratic Party. My grandfather always taught me that 2 is better than 1, and 3 is better than 2, because we're much stronger and we're better when we're together. That's why it's very important for each resident of Shelby County to complete the 2020 census. Doing so will ensure that our district lines are drawn fairly and that every dollar available to Shelby County reaches the communities that make up this great city. So I'm asking each person to take 10 minutes from your busy schedules and visit www.census.gov and complete the census survey. All right, we are back. And it's time to start our lightning round. Okay, now, so here's how it works. I'm going to post an issue on the screen, and I'll tee it up for you, and then you'll talk about that issue and address whatever the concern is. If there's an opportunity for to make a positive impact on it, tell us about it. Tell us where you stand on the issues. We ask that you try and keep your responses around a minute to a minute and a half, because we have quite a few of these issues to go through, and we want to give voters an opportunity to hear as much about where you stand on the issues as practically possible. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Cool. All right. And if there's an issue that you want to go deeper into, or you see an opportunity to really share some unique information, let me know, because we'll be able to go into it depending on how much time we have. And we want voters to basically hear as much as possible about what you have to say about those issues, especially when you see something really big. So you ready to jump in? So here's the first question. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
What is a livable wage?
A livable wage is what a person needs to be housing secure, energy secure, food secure, and be able to take care of their needs. every day of the year, and also have medical access to medical care every day of the year. That's what a livable wage should cover.
Okay. Well, then let me follow up then with this question. How much should that be?
Well, they've been fighting for 15 for 5 years. So we should raise the wage to 15. But we do need to implement a sustainable wage index that does not have to wait on Congress, that reviews the cost of living, because we have so much data. It can be a data driven formula that increases if it needs to and stays the same. And that benefit will also not only be for the minimum wage, but also be able to, for people who are on disability and Social Security, get that same increase.
Okay. And in the model that you're referencing, uh, would that model allow for decreases in the minimum wage? So if it reaches $15
No,
an hour, is it possible for it to go
it
down?
would stay the same.
It would stay the
Yeah,
same?
it would stay the same if it doesn't need to go down.
Okay.
But not in this lifetime have I seen too many things go down.
Mhm.
And I've been living 46 years.
So is that that's an interesting model? Is that a model that currently exists in another state, or is this something original that you plan to present if elected?
This is this is based on reading information on how we can address the fact that our minimum wage has not increased, and it's stuck at what, 7.50 an hour. And I think the first time I worked for minimum wage, it was like 4.25, and that's really not that much. And that was like, I was, yeah, so that's been almost 30 years ago. So that means that it's not keeping up with inflation. And so we have to be able to take it out of Congress's hand if they're going to play politics with it. And so that way, if we create an index that reviews every year the data of what it costs to live, how much it costs for food, broadband, or whatever technology that is needed for a person each year, uh, so it can actually grow, and be reviewed, and then increases if it needs to, or stay the same.
Okay. What about this? Economic growth in Tennessee.
Economic growth in Tennessee, we have to make it better for small businesses to compete. Right now, large corporations have a lot of things that make the field unfair. Um, they're able to qualify for subsidies that small businesses don't get. And so we have to be able to make sure that our small businesses get just as much support, it, to be able to thrive, and that they're not competing with large corporations that are like for instance that would be basically labeled as a retailer because they supply goods and services, and they sell goods and services. And so what that does is that company is getting all of those incentives to provide jobs, but it's also making it unfair for the mom and pop retailers. And so we have to make sure that we keep that balance.
Understood. Okay. Well, on the same topic of economic growth, what is your recipe for bringing more jobs to Tennessee, more jobs that pay a competitive living wage or wage to Tennessee and into Shelby County, Memphis?
Well, we have to make sure that our small business owners have the vehicles that they need in order to have the success to be able to pay people more. And when people get paid more, they'll spend more in Tennessee. And so that's how it is right now. People don't have disposable income, and so they're not spending, and they're tight because they're afraid of what's going to happen next.
Okay. Well, let's transition to a different topic. The security of Social Security. Of course, those who are eligible to receive Social Security now are receiving those benefits, but there's another class or generation gearing up to hit that age, and the concern is there all over the place for whether or not we will be able to continue to service our Social Security program and provide that for Americans for generations to come. What are your thoughts on that, the ways to ensure the stability of our Social Security program?
Well, the stability of our Social Security depends on us addressing how regressive our tax structure is. And that same security applies to our nation too. This regressive structure is really causing havoc for Social Security. So you have billionaires paying the same rate into Social Security as some people who are considered middle class. And that's not fair. They need to pay the rate at the same percentage as everybody else.
Okay.
And when you address that regressive structure and implement a structure that makes the wealthy pay too, then we'll be able to have a sustainable tax structure that can fully fund education, fully fund Social Security, and create economic stability.
Okay. Well, let's talk about, let's go into a different area. How about this? The right to bear arms versus the need for gun control in America.
I believe in the Second Amendment right to be able to bear arms. I come from a hunting family. And so you just really didn't know what was on the table until somebody told you. So you just, it could have been anything, literally. And so I want hunters to know we are not trying to take your weapons. What we are trying to regulate are those high capacity magazines that's meant to kill a whole lot of people, that are meant to be used in wars. Those have no business in a society where we do not have war. And so we need to be able to look at having those limits on the magazine capacities, and making sure that we have universal background checks so we can stop have to teach our children active shooter drills. Even though right now they're in a COVID-19 learning environment, we still don't want people to have access to be able to go shoot up our schools or our churches.
Okay. And I agree with you there. And so in light of that, let's talk about another area where we have, I guess, an escalation of crime. Cracking down on cybercrime. We're in the age of technology now. I think more of us are becoming acclimated to using the internet and other apps and programs that we might not have spent more time or enough time getting acquainted with prior to COVID-19. So, what about cracking down on increasing cybercrime?
We have to be able to implement the type of enforcement that can protect our families from cyber criminals. They have the ability to steal your identity, steal your bank account within the matter of seconds. My mom has been a victim of identity theft 3 times, and it's because of how easily people are able to commit cyber crimes. And so we do need a way to make sure that our internets are safer.
Okay. Well, let's go to a different area. Voting rights for those who have felonies in their background And here's the question: should felons have their voting rights taken in the first place? So people who committed a crime that's a felony, should they have their voting rights taken even in the first place?
No, they should not have their voting rights taken away because they're still subject to follow the laws, and they still have to have financial responsibility for working in prison to pay for the things that they need in there. And we need to make sure that there's that everyone in our society can participate fully in our democracy. I am for restoring the Voter Rights Act and having automatic voter registration and making sure that we can do secure vote by mail and outlawing gerrymandering. Democracy, our key part of our democracy is how our voting system works. And we need to make sure that everyone can participate fully.
Okay. Well, let's talk about and you know what, I'm going to save that one before we get to that question. Let's touch on this one. A new industry that is booming in different markets in America. That it is an incredible source of revenue for those states who have taken the leap. Legalization of cannabis. What are your thoughts on it? Is Tennessee missing the boat, or are we making the right move by staying out of the game?
Look, we are missing a boat when it comes to the legalization of cannabis. Right now, we know that cannabis has a lot of medicinal purposes, and so we're missing a boat on that. I had a critical care nurse call me and ask me if I was for legalization of marijuana because of her patients needed marijuana in order to manage their pain, and it would be better than opioids. And I told her yes. Not only am I for legalization of marijuana, I'm for legalization for recreational use because it is an industry that has funded jobs, education, and so much more. I just don't want Tennessee to be last, because if you look, our neighbor Arkansas has already started, and they're beginning to see the benefits of the legalization of cannabis. Mm-hmm. And so I am all for legalizing cannabis on a federal level and leave the state to regulate like they do alcohol.
Okay. Can you say that last statement again? You said leave the state to regulate like what?
Like alcohol.
Okay, got you. All right. Well, I'm gonna now take you to that question that I was saving before we get to our big showdown question at the end. And so this will be our last lightning round question, but I suspect it might not be as much of a lightning round question as you might think. Social justice, civil rights, and race relations in America. Where do you see the opportunities that could be considered low-hanging fruit for that we could take advantage of today to make some type of long-lasting forward progress?
Michael, when it comes to social justice, civil rights, and race relations in America, policy can happen overnight, right? Mm-hmm. So legislators can put the policies in place with the right type of punitive measures to discourage racism in business, in the criminal justice system, and all throughout our American system. And those attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, they'll change over time.
Okay, so what do you see something other than, or do you see a particular policy that we could to put into motion today, or is there a specific thing that we can do today that you see that would make an impact? And if not, then what do you think the first or the next step is? What do you think the next step is for us to make progress on race relations in America?
Well, the lowest hanging fruit is what you can do with policing and pass the Justice and Policing Act. That's the lowest hanging fruit. Banning chokeholds and eliminating no-knock warrants, because they're dangerous not only for people like Brianna, who was murdered in her bed, who was an EMT and a first responder in her own home for a mistaken house. It's also dangerous for the family members of people who may have committed crimes. You have been known, the data has shown that babies have gotten killed in their crib with no-knock warrants who were innocent. And so, and not a part of what adult behavior brought the police to the door. And here in Memphis, we in the past, a no-knock warrant officer, a female officer was killed. And so we know that that's a dangerous practice, and we need to walk away. We need to just eliminate that altogether. We also need to look at the data of how people are sentenced when it comes to Black, brown, and indigenous people compared to white people when it comes to sentencing or even arrested. We need to start keeping the data and comparing it and being able to red flag those communities that are out of order and put them back in order. And so that's the low hanging fruit. When it comes to environmental racism, we have to clean up the pollution. And it's going to, if we address the pollution, it's going to address climate change. And we move towards technologies like investing into the Green New Deal, where we can rebuild our energy infrastructure, our sewage infrastructure, our do green building and different things like that. We can be able to not only create jobs, but make sure that everyone has access to healthy drinking water. Mm-hmm. Because we've had lead issues in schools here in Tennessee. And if you know, the schools were built at the same time as the homes, students are more likely to be at home in their learning environment now. And so we have to address the lead that's in the home too. And a policy like the Green New Deal will not only help deal with the infrastructure of water delivery, but also energy also.
Okay.
And so those are two low hanging fruits.
All right. Well, then here's our big question for the night. And then after this, we will wrap up and sort of bring our show to a conclusion, but we will let you close us out. So here's the big one. SWOT analysis. So you're the senator for the state of Tennessee, one of the two senators for the state of Tennessee. You're representing our state at the United States Senate, in the United States Senate. Looking at Tennessee, what is our greatest strength? What is our greatest weakness or biggest opportunity for us? And then what is the single greatest threat to Tennessee moving from where it is today to where it can be tomorrow?
Our state is beautiful. One of our biggest strengths is little known to a lot of people is our ecotourism. That's one of our biggest strengths. And when it comes to the environment, also farming. Those are our biggest strengths. We have a big farming economy, and it's all tied to the environment. So that's our biggest strength. Our weakness is also the environment. We have to deal with the pollution that's across the state. It's a problem. And when I declared my candidacy back in October, a lot of people reached out to me because they wanted me to know exactly what was going on in their community when it came to pollution. And so it's not just isolated to South Memphis. So that's the weakness. Our opportunities is to, if we address our weakness, we'll be able to grow and thrive in ways that we will not if we keep doing the same thing. And so our threats is is also within the weakness. And I look at it from the environment, because no matter how healthy you may be able to get the economy going, but it's going to come to a standstill if we don't have clean air, clean water, and clean soil, because corporations can't thrive in a place that's outdoor dirty. Small businesses, you nor I, we need those things to have full integrity and be able to sustain the life that's in it.
Okay. Okay. Well, good answer. Now, so I want to take a minute to share something with voters real quick, and then we're going to give you the last opportunity to close us out, and you can ask the voters for their support and their vote, and you can tell them why you're the best candidate to represent Tennessee as one of its 2 senators in the United States Senate. And so, to our voters, I want to say it's important. Now, I'll begin with the census. It is critically important, everyone, that if you haven't taken the census survey, that you do so, and that you just break off 10 minutes of your time and participate. Doing so is critically important because it will ensure that our district lines are drawn fairly, and that the resources that we need in Shelby County and in the city of Memphis from our federal government are allocated in the appropriate amounts, and that those resources will actually get here. So we need that to happen. Let's do our part and make sure that we're being counted. And so we want to do that. And also, please understand that everyone can make a difference, and one vote can be the difference. So it's important to get to the polls on August 6th. Don't play games with it. Every vote matters. One vote is a statement. 50 votes is a beginning to make a rumble. 100 votes is where we start bundling our power. 1,000 votes, and we can start shifting things. 10,000 votes, and we reinforce our voices. We reinforce the things that we're fighting for. We reinforce our position, and we bring accountability to the table. We can then hold our elected officials accountable in a more meaningful way. We can demand what change we would like to happen, because that vote becomes the gift that we can take away when we have an elected official that doesn't have our best interests at heart and is not taking us seriously as voters. So get out to vote, and make sure that when you're bringing the fight or taking a stand for what's right, that you don't just do it in the streets or in the protests or at work or at home or in your neighborhood. Make sure you do it at the polls. Go in there and vote. All right. Miss Marquita Bradshaw, our guest for today. If you would like to learn more information about her, you can visit her website at www.marquitabradshaw.com. The website is at the bottom of the screen. And on her website, you can click on the icons to access her Facebook and Twitter accounts and any other social media platforms that she has up and running. And so now I'll stop. And Miss Bradshaw, the audience is yours. Our viewers are yours. Talk to the people, close the deal, and tell them why you feel you're the best candidate to represent Tennessee in reference to this race in the U.S. Senate, and ask for their vote.
My name is Marquita Bradshaw, and I am from South Memphis. I say that I'm from South Memphis because I want you to know that it is a place that experienced a lot of inequities. And here I am running for U.S. Senate because I know and I understand that Tennessee needs a leader who not only will fight for hardworking families, but who lives the issues just like you do. And I'm that candidate. Just imagine what it would be like to have a U.S. Senator who's had to experience medical bankruptcy due to our broken healthcare system. One who has had to experience long hours, multiple jobs just to put food on the table. and one who has experienced what it's like to live in a polluted community. Those are all the issues and talking points that people are talking about in politics. And you and we need representation that not only understands the issue, but someone who lives the issues that hardworking people can trust to fight for them, to have healthy and safe communities where they live, learn, work, and recreate. And we do that by strengthening three pillars: education, an environment full of integrity, and an economy that works for hardworking families. And you can go to my website to learn more about those platforms. But here I am today. I am asking for your vote and your support on August 6th because we can change this U.S. Senate seat to Democrat with a candidate that can inspire other people to get off the couch and come vote after they have worked three jobs because they know that Marquita Bradshaw will fight for healthy and safe communities. Vote August 6th, Marquita Bradshaw. Thank you.
All right. Well, you have heard it from the lady herself, Miss Marquita Bradshaw. And for just to make sure you got it, her name is Marquita Bradshaw, and she is running to represent the state of Tennessee as one of its two United States senators. So she would be serving in the United States Senate if she's elected. So please check out her website, read as much about her campaign platform as possible, and inform yourself so that when you go vote, you have all the information you need to make a really good decision. And so, Ms. Bradshaw, thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation. We wish you the best of luck on the campaign trail, and we encourage you to stay focused and stay committed, and we look forward to great things from you generally. So thank you, and have a
Thank
great
you so much.
You're very welcome.
Until next time.
Until next time.